Welcome everybody to another episode of the Perceptive Podcast. Here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. My returning guest tonight is from Retro Ninja. He is a veteran game designer with over 30 years of experience. We had a massive conversation last time. I'm sure we'll have another one this time. So please welcome back to the conversation, Tony Barnes. How are you doing?
I'm good, doing my thing, being a little tired, but it's Friday, so I should be super excited, except for now that I work for myself, Friday is just another day.
I know the feeling. I have calls to make and things to be writing as soon as we're done with this. There's no such thing as a weekend anymore either.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at a lot of French factories in my time, so I've had a lot of Fridays that weren't. We used, when someone would come around and say, "Oh, it's Friday," I'd say, "Is it a fake Friday or a real Friday?" Because, whether we were actually going to see each other on Saturday. But the biggest difference is no donuts today. Because there's no one to just kind of go out and randomly grab me random donuts. But it's okay. I'll live without the donut.
But it is great to chat with you again. As I said, we had a really great conversation last time. And for everyone watching, be sure to check that out. You'll find a link to it down below. So one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about last time, we kind of like dipped our toes into it, but I really wanted to spend some time chatting with you about it, is more about like action design, action gameplay. Because again, your background includes many action games and credits over the past 30 plus years. And it is a genre that I have played so many examples of. I think we talked a little about kind of like the Souls-like design last time. We talked about just like more like arcade action. So I guess my first question for you then is, I want to kind of get your thoughts on kind of where the evolution has happened with Souls-like games, with like Sekiro, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and the like. As a lot of people, like, it really, I think, took a lot of people off guard when the first Demon Souls kind of popped up. I think it was like 2008, 2009. And it kind of like
I don't
has
know
like
if it,
thrown a lot of people for a loop in terms of what is good Souls-like design, what is bad Souls-like design.
yeah, it's interesting. Most people they think that uh, From Software just popped up out of nowhere, out of the ether with Dark Souls. I don't think they played any of their previous games. I mean, I was first introduced to them by Kingsfield,
Mm-hmm.
so I learned very quickly that they weren't into onboarding. They were into kicking your ass and really didn't care. Uh, so I was kind of repulsed by such at the time. It's not that I like easy games. It's just that it was like, what the hell? And then you get the Souls games. Um, I it so yeah, like for me, it's funny where the masses kind of picked up on their style and then attempted to and continue to attempt it to do it. It it feels to me the same way that a lot of 2D platformers feel,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like this surface level understanding of the mechanics or what you're looking at. I don't really understand how all of the systems, the entirety of the actual product comes to play to actually, synergize to make this experience. And it's one of the reasons that you get these kind of, these souls alikes that don't hit, just like you get, Vampire Survivor clones that don't hit. It's just someone that did not, they look and they go, oh, okay, I get it. I can do that. Make it really hard. Make the windows for attacking very small, and maybe you get someone that's fancy and goes, okay, make this all about retaliation, and but they're really missing the totality of the game. It's one of the reasons that it takes something like an Elden Ring to actually go, hey, here I am, and I'm better than the ones that you loved before. It's because they understood what the whole of it is. It's not just it's not just punishing hits and dodge rolls. But yeah,
uh,
it so it's interesting. You're kind of saying that like I guess that is the evolution of the current trajectory for action games. I guess action games are Souls-like for the most part. Is that kind of the consensus?
it kind of feels that way. We really haven't seen like, at least from like a mainstream studio, it seems like in years, like kind of like a the likes of a Ninja Gaiden, God Hand, or even like a Devil May Cry. I mean, the last Devil May Cry I got was 5, and what year was that? Because I know I played
So
that one.
five was probably in 2018 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I guess technically speaking, yeah, it was 2019. I guess technically speaking, I forgot their name because they haven't made a big enough impact for me yet. But the
Mhm.
Stellar Blade people, uh, that game is what some people may call now retro feeling. Um, I take offense, but that has the vibe of I guess what they like to call now spectacle fighters, um, and it's fairly mainstream. I mean,
Mhm.
sure, it's an independent developer, and it's the wonderful tale of it's their first game and blah blah blah. It's their first game as a team. It's not their first game.
Mhm.
It's like saying that Fruit Ninja was Half Brick's first game. Come on, they created many games before that. Um, but yeah, I guess mainstream wise, it's not somewhere that people who are making action combat games are gravitating towards. They're gravitating towards more the Souls-alike, Sekiro, and all that kind of fun stuff. Um, yeah, so I guess that is kind of the state of play right now. What's interesting to me about things like that is, you know, I, so yeah, I've been doing this for almost 40 years actually. Next year it'll be 40 years. Um, and so you notice patterns, things are cyclical and all that fun stuff. So um, and like mechanics are like my thing. So whenever I look at a game, I always look at it and try to kind of see its DNA. Where did these ideas come from, and all this? And I see a lot of reductive stuff that's happening. It's like, I mean, probably the simplest one to explain is like tower defense, right? The tower defense is an RTS, but you strip away a lot of kind of the management things like that. And so then what you see is this stripping down, and sometimes stripped down like really bare, like almost like a Vampire Survivors is kind of a twin stick, but they take away the shooting, so then that's reducing the amount of agency that a player has, but then they add it back in, um, you know, building. For, I was going to say deck building, but it's not really a deck. But you get these builds and all that fun stuff, which is kind of ARPG esque. So I keep seeing these genres pop up that people think are new or something, but really they're old genres that have been stripped down because the old genre kept getting more and more added onto it to be competitive because practically everything was quote AAA back then. Um, and so I look at things like like we're talking about Souls likes, and I see a lot of reduction going on there. I also start to see, where people will start to go, okay, how can we innovate in the space? And they innovate in the space by doing their twist on putting back things that have been taken out. So you start ending up with Souls games that are faster. The actual combat was like very slow and deliberate at first, and it keeps getting faster. But it's like what is the analogy? The frog boiling in a pot. The speed is not speeding up so quickly from game to game that people are really noticing it. But it really is kind of speeding back up to. I mean, it's not at BMC or God of War levels right now, but I can see that as a trajectory that things are going to start getting faster, and that then it's like, okay, well, what else are they going to pull from the past back in to pretend to be new? And a lot of times this isn't like someone sitting there twirling their mustache or whatever, going ha ha ha. How can I get over? It's a natural evolution for a lot of people. They're kind of like, okay, I'm making my game, and there are people out there that they just want to make their version of Game X, right? And then there are people who go, okay, I'm going to make my version of Game X. But why is anyone going to care? So what do I bring to the party that's new? Um, and that's like time an idea pops in my head for Retro Ninja, I write it down. I write it down on paper because I like paper. It's tactile. It helps me, kind of remember it and all this stuff. And it's, sometimes it's good to get away from this. So I write them down, right? And then I sit there and I think, well, what makes this different? Not like innovative and all that kind of crap. Because honestly, like it's cool that people put their energies into that and all that, but that kind of weight, I feel like sometimes can actually cripple the creative process. I've certainly found that in AAA development, where it's like you go, okay, we're going to do game X, and here's the pillars, here's the hooks, right? And then someone pops up out of nowhere in a meeting and goes, "Wow, what's your USP?" And you're like, okay, here's the hooks, here's the pillars. And they're like, no, 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 it absolutely needs to innovate. And it's like, sometimes I just want to make a good game. I just want to make a great version of something. And I don't want to sit there and figure out how to reinvent the wheel and then expend all this energy trying to teach someone this brand new thing that I had to cram into the game that was already like a nice tight little package. Um, that said, I do sit and go, okay, you know, what makes my version of Space Invaders, worth playing? Like, why is someone going to go get it? Not just because it says it's Tony Barnes Retro Ninja Space Invaders. Although that would be cool. It would be cool to be able to just kind of, diarrhea out games and that people just buy them because it's just me. But it's like what's it bringing new, right? Um, and I've got like the 40 years of catalog in my head, or actually I've been probably how long have I been playing games since 8? When now we're gonna do some more math. Um, like 40 plus years of gaming, so I can like pull on that and all that fun stuff, or I can like extrapolate out where things are gonna go. But I think for a lot of people, especially you're working in a team or you're working for a publisher and all that stuff, they have this weight of having to come up with this new, interesting, innovative thing that nobody's heard of. And because of the nature of our business, which is that it's cyclical, and yet people are just like they completely ignore the past. They think that I was just talking to someone and they were saying, 2020, wow, that was a long time ago. What are you talking about? 2020, a long time ago. Um, so the fact that a lot of people just can't look back critically grants grants a lot of people some advantage, and they look back and they go, okay, um, what did I like, or what game did X and failed or whatever. Those are my favorites actually. The games that failed or nobody paid attention to. I mean, I feel bad for the teams, yada yada, but I love looking at games that aren't the popular ones. because the popular ones, when you look at them, everybody's looking at them, right? Everybody, everybody's listening to the same radio station. Everybody's singing the same tune. That's great. Um, but you miss all the the cool garage bands or whatever. I'm trying to use in some musical analogy here because I was just making music. Um, but yeah, I like to look at the stuff that people didn't look at or that kind of failed, for lack of a better term. Wasn't it's not on someone's top 10 list. They're not making 20 Wikipedia pages and videos all the same off of it, because in there you'll find lots of gems, lots of things to help you um, innovate and
Mhm.
really like kind of iterate and progress. Um, when it comes to like action stuff, um, it's it's funny because now if I were to like if someone said, "Okay, Tony, you're making an action game and all that fun stuff," and they're saying, "Yeah, but you can't just lean into making a spectacle fighter. So you need to. How are you going to push the souls alike?" Um, I would probably, I mean, I would look at probably my back catalog. It's like you have games like Buffy. Um, Buffy's not um, full on Devil May Cry or God of War, but it's also not. It's not slow and methodical like a Souls like. Um, we had we had uh, a pretty cool queuing system for when guys would come up to you and all that fun stuff. Um, but it wasn't like a Souls, which even when there are multiple characters, really you you're really only under attack by one at a time. Like the other ones, their queue is so small, and like so you're really kind of like the other guys that are around, you're like, okay, let me dodge them or make sure that they don't wind up in an attack. But you're really hyper focused on, the one thing and probably the thing that's going to hurt you the most, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then you get the opposite end, which is like, like a God of War, where there's just a ton of puppet beat bags, and you almost don't care how many are around you because you've got so many area clearing attacks and all this, and they happen so fast that um, it's just like this, the spectacle of chewing them up. Um, Buffy's like not even like Batman, not even like Batman or Sifu because those are very much like you can be surrounded by guys, but the game kind of helps you get from guy to guy.
Mhm.
Buffy was like um, bring in characters. We'd have them circle strafe you. We'd have them understand the relationship between you and the other combatants that were coming into range or were already in range, so they didn't like get on top of each other and look stupid. But and you'd have all kinds of things like certain characters had more tendency to flank, so they would actually want to engage when you were engaged with another character, um, so that they could actually circle around you instead of kind of being in your front 180 and things like that. And they would, they'd be like, "I have priority. I want them." Like it was first, it's I want to do this attack. This is the right attack to do. This is the attack that's going to be most successful. I want to do it now. And the queuing system would be like, "Yeah, you want that, but you're not going to get that because this person's right about to throw a punch." Or this one, this guy, even though he hasn't queued up, he's much closer in range. And by the time you actually get in range from the attack that you want to do, he could probably throw a jab or something. There's like many layers going on in Buffy's combat. And if you just like, if you run into a room, get surrounded by three or four guys, and just sit there and kind of um, race around as if you were think about it like a kung fu movie or something. You can watch it, and you can start seeing the AI play out that way. Um, and you can start seeing things like the AI getting aggressive because it knows it has backup that are of a higher level than itself. So, like, two grunts come in, they're kind of standoffish about fighting, but then as soon as a higher level guy comes in, they become more aggressive. Things like that. So to me, sorry, going on a tangent, but that's the kind of stuff that I want to start to integrate, and that's just purely on a combat level. One of the key things I really liked about what we did in Buffy was it had it had integrated navigation and combat. We didn't do like one of my favorite game series, Darksiders, which also has a lot of ex-collective people that worked on it. But we didn't do like Darksiders. If you look at Darksiders, it's it's rather atomic in its gameplay. There are combat areas and pretty much combat. That's it. And then there are puzzle areas, and then there's navigation areas. And even if one area doubles as a navigation and combat area, you're not navigating while you're combating. You're not like you're not fighting someone on the ground, deciding to jump up onto a ledge, wall run and jump off of the wall run, and then start juggling someone in the air, right? Um, so these kind of these three modes are kind of atomic, and that's not by accident. That's definitely designed that way, and it's good because it keeps for a game that's rather robust in all of those areas. It makes it so they don't have to um, handle a lot of weird edge cases. You know, Obviously we didn't know any better. We also didn't really have a lot of time, um, so it was just like, okay, here's a space, and here's kind of the rhythm of what's going to go on in it, but the flow of everything's a bit more organic, more loose, just because ignorance is bliss, and we didn't know any better. We had to solve a lot of problems of someone jumping up on something or you being on a ledge climb and whatnot, and then we, where we could, added moves to that to counter, so you weren't like climbing up a ledge and just completely at the mercy of some sort of demon trying to yank you off the wall. But again, we didn't have a lot of time, so if I were to look at expanding the action combat genre, I would look at that too. Is because I like environments. I like making environments. I like what I really like, and I don't understand like why this fell off. Is I loved walking into a room in a video game, and looking around the room, knowing the room was some sort of puzzle, but not being told by some big marker or yellow paint. I get yellow paint. I totally get it. But I miss having to walk in or a set of rooms and just logically figure it out. Which also means I miss designers that thought logically. Like so it's a two-way street. It's not just like, oh, the players don't want X and all that stuff. No, I often will put back onto my design brethren this thing where it's like you have to really put yourself into the mind of people, not just a person, not just yourself, not just pretend that you're a gamer and all that stuff, because that's just you. That's just one out of millions, right? So you have to put yourself into the mindset of people, whoever your target audience is that's playing this thing. which is going to be several different people types, and go, okay, as a person with little to no prior knowledge of this puzzle, but I have knowledge of, said mechanics from the past, 20 minutes, 20 hours, whatever. How would I go about solving this? How do I even recognize it? What are the elements that constitute this puzzle? Things like that. And I kind of miss that type of design in games. Just gotten to this point where, and I kind of get it. Time is limited and all this stuff, but we've optimized out part of the fun of gaming, which is discovery, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I mean like active discovery that you sought out, not discovery as in reveals. Like, a reveal is different. A reveal is, that type of discovery is passive. It's like you're going along, and then, there's a big vista. Oh, that's a reveal, right? Or you're going along and you flip a couple of switches, and all of a sudden there's a cutscene that shows, statues move and all this water pour into a room, blah blah blah. I mean, that's a reveal. That's not a discovery. Because there were markers that were telling you, there was the flashing statues, the yellow paint. And again, I get it. I mean, you know, I'm readying at this time. I'm readying BPM Boy for release on PC, and there's a bunch of little things that I've had to tweak and everything. To me, it's a simple game. I mean, it's more than Marble Madness. It's more than Super Monkey Ball, but it's not. It's along those lines. It's a physics-based platformer. Seems simple to me, but yet I see it over and over again. Enough people interacting with it in ways that make me go, "What the fuck? Why did you do that? Like, why? Or did you not see where it told you exactly what to do, right?" And I realized, no, they don't see. There's basically, depending upon the size of your screen, an inch or so square in the center of the screen or wherever the player character is. There's an inch around them that's all they look at. Nobody looks at, you stick your HUD elements up in the corner or wherever. No one sees that ever. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much it pops up and animates and everything. If you don't put it in that little space in the center of the screen where they're looking, and or stop the game, then they just don't see it or pay attention. It's so insane to me. And so, okay, I have to compensate for that. I personally don't like being stopped in the middle of games because I tend to make and play action games, right? So I don't want your pop-up to just halt my game. Drives me bananas. If you play Strider 2014, the things that stop the player are things that I knew were more than one line, and I needed you to really digest what was just being said. So that is only in the case of major power-ups. You get like some new major ability, whole thing stops. Has some text and icons because I also try to avoid words as much as possible. And then waits for you to press a button to go, right? And then even after that, I still reinforce everything through the environment, through the enemies, through the game, because talking about things, just that's not what games are. Games are interactive, right? So you should always reinforce what it is, teach and reinforce through the actual actions that the players can do. So in BPM Boy, I don't ever stop the player. I never stop and say, here, do this, right? Um, so I end up having to, move things, make things flashy more. Um, same with Polygunner, which is a top-down shmup. It, it has an issue where um, I call it a run-or-gun shooter because you can't run and gun. There's tons of great twin stick shooters out there, and I said, you know what? I want to make a single stick shooter, um, and I want to make a game that's about positioning and about threat prioritization. Um, and so that's how it basically started. And I also want to, keep furthering my isometric, kind of shooter things because eventually I'll make a new strike game. I don't know, probably this year somewhere. Anyway, um, so I come up with this whole input system where it's like you move around, you've got great momentum, and you hold down the button, and so move the stick. This is where I'm going. Hold down the button to fire. This is where I'm aiming now, right? Let go of the button. This is where I'm moving. Fire. This is where I'm aiming. And because of the physics of the ship, you end up most people learn like to use the momentum of the ship if they want to do like a strafing kind of thing or something like that. They end up kind of doing drive-bys on things and whatnot. And there's also like a dash button, which is also analog, so you can instead of just getting all of your dash all bursted out, and you can actually learn how to kind of feather it so that you can sort of move and shoot. But I didn't want to make a twin stick shooter because twin stick shooters are about kiting. They're about getting all the enemies to come into a little line, into a bottleneck. You're always backing away from them, and you're just shooting them in a line, a big conga line. And I didn't want to do that. Like I said, I wanted to be about positioning and threat prioritization. So I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy about what I have. And of course, friends and family are like, yeah, this is cool. And then I take it on the road. I take it to like, Comic-Con and things like that. And I get like I don't know, maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 60-40, where a high enough percentage, 40 or 50% of the people is way too high for me, that they did not understand the control. They have way too much muscle memory associated with the mechanics of twin stick shooters. They don't even have like muscle memory associated with like asteroid type games because I had quickly at the last second done an alternate input scheme that people could so it's more like asteroids where you rotate and you push a button to thrust, and you could thrust and fire at the same time, but you couldn't really so it's still momentum based and everything, but you can't like be kiting. You can't fire and move in a different direction. Even that was like confusing to people. And part of it is, I'm not doing my job in teaching it, but I'm probably gonna have to break my rule and actually stop players, like and then scream explicitly. Because one of the biggest issues is and it says it over and over again in a little pop-up that pops up in the center of the screen. It says, hold the fire button to fire. But everyone, like, well, not everyone, but like I said, there's like 40% of people who just tap the fire button. Tap, 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 tap. Tapping the fire button, the way the code and everything's written and everything will basically kind of get one bullet out, and then there's a certain amount of time that it takes for your turret to rotate. There's all these things that are going on, And so tapping is the least optimal way to play the game. It basically makes your ship stutter because it's starting and stopping. It's not really getting into its kind of slide. Your ability to aim is nerfed because you never really hold down the button to actually aim in a different direction. So basically, 40% of the people are playing and thinking that the way this game plays is that when you go to fire, I don't know, you got bad gas in your car or something. You just start stuttering. And I'm just like, oh my god, it's killing me. Um, so sorry about that tangent, but it's like introducing, especially into action games, introducing new or innovation, however you want to call it. Um, it's it's tough because a lot of people nowadays they just want to get into their comfy shoe. They don't have a lot of time. They don't really want to learn what it is you're saying. They just want the yellow paint. Tell me where to go, or they want the sandbox, like squirrel with a gun or something. And I tend to make games that are call it simple, hot, and deep. They're simple to get into. They have a lot of heat, so that you're like, ooh, I like the way that feels. I like the way that looks. But there's depth based upon the time that you spend with the simple mechanics and the simple controls. Um, but um, a lot of people nowadays don't have time for the depth. You know, like I mean, what is it? I haven't even looked at the numbers and whatnot nowadays. I think there's probably 1,000 games released every day or something absurd like that. Have discovery, even someone even finding your game is insane enough, and then giving it enough time to actually discover, um, the depth and what's great about it. It's like it's like pop music. You just got to start with the hook now. You got to start on the chorus, and then through verses, just go chorus. I don't know, a couple of lines, chorus, minutes, you're done. um,
So many things
certainly
like
for
so many things I could springboard off of from what you were just talking about, Tony. I was just thinking about as you were.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess the first thing I just want to say, as someone who has going back to your comment about having gooey elements, the little corners of the screen, for people watching, you can see me going on my little overlay. I have missed that countless times. That oh, where am I supposed to find how much health I have or where my ammo is? It's right here. This little tiny no just plain text font number that you're supposed to keep track of. And
yeah,
to your point about the yellow paint and stuff like that, I'm also that same mindset that I understand it, but to me it sometimes comes off as being a band-aid fix for not having good level design, good environmental design. The one that kind of drives me up a wall when I see it, where it's here's a locked door, here's the lever that's 10 feet away. Now we need a cutscene to show you that this lever that was 10 feet away goes at this door that's still within the camera frame.
yeah. Even in as far back as Buffy, which is now 22 years old. Holy criminy! And this was laterally into things like Indiana Jones and stuff like that. But I had this rule where it's if you're in the same room, if you can see it, no cutscene. Do not take away control just to dial the camera all the way over where somewhere where I should be looking. Let's let's adjust the space so that the switch is actually looking at the door that it opens. And that's not to say that Buffy doesn't have a myriad of cutscenes, because it does. At any time it was like this switch you were flipping. If it was in the same room or vicinity, it was just like, why are we taking control away from the camera or from the player? Plus, it was just more crap to debug anyway. Because especially back then, I think like Microsoft had some rule that every single cinematic needed to be skippable. It was like right when the Xbox shipped, and a lot of places are kind of draconian as they're getting the hang of things. Um, and nowadays, kind of the general rule on consoles in general is that players should not be out of control for more than 6 seconds. Um, and so that's good because 6 seconds in video game land is a lot of time. You should be able to get done what you need to get done. Anyway, point is that like anytime we made a cinematic in Buffy or Indy or any of those early Slayer engine games, we had to do a lot of hoop jumping so that if you push the button to bounce out of it, we fade the camera. We had to kind of fast forward a lot of things that were happening, trigger all, and make sure manually to trigger these events that were supposed to happen in real time that you were watching. So I was like, man, you know what? Let's just save ourselves a lot of drama and not do that. And again, like I said, the best thing to do is to actually adjust the environment so that you're not having to flip a switch in another room or something like that. It's like have me go through a lot of drama and then come back into an alcove that I could never get to normally, but it overlooks, the event that's happening and let me flip the switch and then see it there. To me, that's a far better design. And if you have to, fine, do the cutscene thing. And the other thing was, and actually, I think our creative director, Richard Hare, a lot of people had issues with him, me included. But he meant well. He meant well, without doubt. And he would say things that for a lot of people would be off-putting, and all they do is latch on to the venom behind what he would say, and not really hear what he's saying. For me, it was I took more of his feedback as challenges. You know, I have something in the game, and he'd go, so I was going to try and do a Scottish accent, but no, never mind. To go like, so why are you doing that, right? And I'd go to say something, and he goes, don't say because it's a game. You know, I know it's a game, but why did you do it like that, right? They challenge you and stuff like that. And so I would do the same, trickle down. I would do the same to the designers working for me on my games. Is like, don't just do it just because it's a game. You just, that's what you do. It's a game. Or you'd be like, why are there three switches right next to each other when you could just open the door with one? I said, well, then there's three switches to switch, and he's like, for what? What? And so, like, again, going back to Buffy, if you look, you don't have areas where there's like 10 million switches for one door. There's a couple of places where there are like kind of three switch puzzle kind of things, but those are actually made into puzzles, where it's like, a switch turns this light, from red to green. Okay, now I have to figure out, which order the red to green, or this switch turns this thing, and then the other switch turns the outer ring. Those kind of puzzles, right? So it's like, okay, if I have a need that three switches in the stupid room to open a stupid door, then I need to make it mean something. It has to be meaningful content. It has to be meaningful interaction, and not just because it's a game or because it was really easy for me to throw down three switches and three triggers. And so those those little pushbacks were good, because it set in me the mindset that's like, yeah, you know what, you're right, yeah, um, and like I feel like a lot of designers say it's just a game, um, and yes, it's a game, and whoever your player is has bought into that it's a game, right? Um, it's action or whether it's some crazy horror adventure or whatever. There are things that you can do that will pull players out of your game, no
Yep.
matter what the game is. It could be Tetris, and you can do one thing, and it'll pull someone out of your game because, like, if someone's playing your game, they're in it. They want to be in it. They came. They want to like you, unless of course it's their gig to be on YouTube or Twitch and just talk smack. But for the most part, they want to actually have fun. They want to be immersed, right? No matter what type of game it is. Um, like so that means your job is to entertain and to keep them immersed and all that stuff and keep them along for the ride. And um, so you really want to like kind of mitigate the friction that takes
Mm-hmm.
people out of and pulls them out or is like a skip in the record, and so um, even in the simplest of Tomb Raider clones, walking into a room and having three switches on the wall, flashing, 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 and a bunch of yellow paint on how to get to them, and a big old honking arrow over the door. Like that's a skip in the record. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. Um, and so I don't know. I would love it for people to kind of uh, get back to the mindset of making things that are a bit more immersive and to really like think about um, uh, keeping the player in it, and then them discovering things more than things being revealed to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe I'll make it a dark sider the kind of thing, action adventure combat-y thing. That's a little more, or I guess like we're talking about Souls. Like how do I evolve that? But by pulling stuff from older games that people seem to have abandoned. That's my first thought on it. How do I evolve it? Evolve it by going back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And will like the Tomb Raider example. Like I remember when I played the reboot of it, and like they had like the actual like temple missions where they remove where like it was supposed to be the challenge, and they just stopped telling you where you're supposed to go, and you have to figure things out. And those are some of like the most enjoyable parts of that one for me. And to that point, I think another trap like developers make when they kind of like embrace like the yellow paint, the quest marker, highlights, and all that, is then they'll have this section where it's like, okay, we think we've taught the player enough. Now we're going to remove all that, and now the player's lost because you did nothing in terms of onboarding or giving the player any means of learning this game, and then it just feels like you kind of like went too far on the other end.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like raising a child. You really you take them to the playground. You're worried that they're gonna slip and fall and all that stuff. But at some point, they need to slip and fall so they can learn how to get back up and scrape it off. Know that that little fall isn't a big deal compared to jumping off the top of a building and breaking your leg. That's a little more. And they won't know that if um, you've had the training wheels on like super strict for too long. Um, but then with my games, I used to have a rule actually. Everybody makes it press the first level. Granted, strike games aren't really no one just on the first time out makes it past the first level. But I would consider victories in um, instead of an entire mission, within, I mean, the strike structure is that there are several actual objectives within a mission. There's like campaign, mission, objective, right? And then there's moment to moment gameplay. But we won't get down to that micro level. But the point is that like I was like, okay, the first few objectives are a gimme. And this is the same for any level on practically every game that I've worked on, is that it's fairly easy. I mean, if you're asleep, I'm sorry, I'm still going to kill you or whatever it is that you're still going to lose, because I don't think that's fair. um, but tend to do a lot of things to make it so that you're you're sucked in, but you're not overwhelmed. Um, also, I'm trying to teach you and teach you how you move, and teach you how the world works, and teach you how you can interact with it and all that stuff. And so, kind of remove the so to somewhat remove the issue of failure by tuning it in such a manner. Not that you can't fail, because I don't do that. Those aren't my games. But that failure is something that you really had to go out of your way to do, to acquire. And so it makes you feel better and all that fun stuff. It clears out some of the noise so that I can hopefully get the basics down for you. And then from there, all bets are off. Then from there it's the roller coaster. It's the ramp that goes up and up and up, and then drops, and then up and up and up, and then drops.
And
Yeah, like I also don't. I don't want to generalize, because it's not every game, but I'm noticing a lot of games actually are like set up where you can't fail whatsoever. Like, you just stand in the middle of a whole bunch of gunfire, and everybody's missing you, and you're hardly taking damage. And I'm not sure that's helping. I mean, it goes as far back, even there's like Mega Man games that do that stuff. But like, it's kind of like what you're saying. There's all this hand holding, and all of a sudden there isn't any. So what ends up happening is people have idea. They don't understand how they got to where they got to, because there was so much hand holding. They also don't understand consequence, like in the sense of like combat, driven games, whether it be shooting or melee. They don't understand how much a bullet hurts. They don't understand how much an axe hit hurts, because it's all been nerfed. In the sense of my games I'm talking about, I don't I don't nerf like the shots or the damage or stuff like that. I don't artificially underneath the thing like go, okay, I'm gonna have grunt number one. This is level one, and here's grunt number one, and he only does 25% of the damage, but then on the next level he's doing a full damage or something like that. I would just as soon just give you a lesser enemy. I'd rather give you a minion, or give you a different variation on that. That's a clear, weaker variation. So you understand, oh, this guy hurts a little. Okay, got it. Oh, there's another one. But that guy's red, and he's got a chest plate on. Oh, he hurt more. Okay. And escalation, and you actually understand that things hurt, instead of you going, oh, every time I see grunt number one, I'm confused on how much he's going to hurt, or maybe he doesn't hurt at all. I don't know. I think it's good to make people respect the things that can kill them in the game.
Oh, I have this funny story. I played this like horror game. It was like a few years ago. Like it was one of those ones that like all the YouTubers were saying, "Oh, it's the scariest game out there." I think IGN rated that as well. I remember I was playing it, and there was this part where it's supposed to be all spooky and scary. You're supposed to run away from the monster. The music's blaring, and I got turned around. I
Hmm.
know where I was going, and then I realized that the monster just completely stopped chasing me because the script only was to like kind of like push you in that direction. So if you stopped,
Hmm.
he just disappears. Like he won't appear until you get like the next trigger. And I was just sitting there going, well, I could just stay here for the next 10 minutes. Like the music's still like going like, oh, it's so scary. Gotta be running, running. Gotta do all this, but he's gone. Like he just completely disappeared. And I was like, this is what people consider to be like the scariest game. I've said this before. I think I've had nightmares scarier than a lot of the some of the indie horror games I've played.
Yeah, that's another. I don't like. It's kind of like what I was saying with put yourself in the mind of players, plural, right? So I don't get, especially something where you're meant to you're meant to be doing something that isn't normal or natural in video games, which is like in video games, it's all for years, decades, it's been power fantasy, right? So it's all about us conquering things, right? Um, and so then all of a sudden you start introducing other genres and people start doing it right, like horror, right? I mean, there's always kind of been a little bit of horror in all kinds of games, but it's still power fantasy. I mean, Splatterhouse is a power fantasy. It's not scary because you're the monster killing other monsters and you're badass doing it, right? Um, but then you start getting into games, like your Resident Evils, and then you start getting into like your Amnesias and things. And um, so you start to strip away and chip away at the power fantasy. Um, but it's something that like really has to be taught and it has to be nurtured throughout your game. That's like no, no, do not try and interact with this thing. Do not engage this thing. This thing will kill you. And that means that also whoever's making the game, everybody on the team really should be in on it. But fine, it's just the QA and the designers, whatever. But like, um, should always be looking at it like, who's going to break my game? Who's going to break the immersion? What happens if? What happens if they stop running? Okay, what happens if um, they somehow slip past this thing? What happens if they try and do this? Game making is a series of what happens if, right? Um, and then the choices that you make are some of the most important ones, especially when it comes to something like being afraid and being a horror game. Um, you cannot like have um, you know scary monster, schoolgirl running down dark corridor towards you, and he doesn't take up the entire corridor, and you have the ability to sprint and then slide, right? Okay, first of all, that sprint and slide better be useful for something that makes you feel great for escaping the thing that's going to chew your face off, not doing something like what I'm about to describe, which is to run at said schoolgirl and then, you know, um, off to the side of her, slide past her. Now, so because that's a empowered move, you're running at the antagonist, and you're utilizing a powerful move, i.e., the sliding thing, to slide past her. Um, so that's that's a that's a bad thing. That's a problem. That's something that should have probably never happened to begin with because you're empowering a player in a game where you want them to feel at a disadvantage. But I've seen people go, okay, how do I fix it? Because she's running at you, and I want you to run the other way, and all this stuff. Um, how do I fix it? Because I don't want her to catch you and kill you. Um, oh, I know. I'll just make her collision fill the entire hallway. That means all of a sudden you slide and you say you're in first person. You look over, you can see her running, and you're getting pushed by this invisible thing. All of a sudden, you're no longer in along for the ride. You're no longer in this haunted house that you want to be in. You're in more of a broken down county fair kind of haunted house where you're just kind of laughing at everything. Um,
Mhm.
and it's amazing to me that there are a lot of designers that their choice for Band Aid is the thing that breaks their game. It's the thing that
Mhm.
pulls players right out of it. Again, this could be horror, this could be action, it could be anything. That's like your choices make to I don't want to say counter because that sounds adversarial, but to have this conversation with the player, um, they're very important. You know, you have to weigh every one of them and say, okay, which one of these choices I'm making is going to make it so that I accomplish the thing that I'm trying to do or fix,
Mhm.
but I'm not doing it in a manner that pulls the player out of my game.
Mhm.
Um, it even comes down to simple things like, um, it, Medal of Honor 2010. Um, I really didn't want a lot of invisible walls or anything around because that instantly pulls you out. So the environments are constructed in a way that they have elements and elevation changes that you just kind of go, yeah, okay, I get it. I can't go any further, right?
Mhm.
And those type of things that are friction come before you actually reach an invisible wall. Um, we had a great art team, so a lot of the environments look and feel way more open than they really are. Like the actual corridor that you're going through is a lot more constricted than what you can see, and it also having things like these berms and stuff. Um, they allow things like it I could spawn enemies. And they kind of pop up out of nowhere, but not in a manner that like makes you go, "Hey, where are these guys
Mhm.
spawning from? Is there a spawn closet somewhere?" It seems more logical, like that they ran over a hill or something. And so there's all of these things have to work in concert. The art and the design, and where and when you spawn things and all this. And then when you play Medal of Honor 2010, I felt it was important to make you respect getting shot.
Mhm.
You know, we're sitting there looking at the almighty COD, Modern Warfare, and I'm just like, holy crap, man. And okay, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. Okay, you know, um, we'll we'll lean in on a different vibe. And if you really play it, it is a different vibe. Like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare is very much you can see its influences on its sleeve. You can see where there's the Rock, or um, while we pull more from Black Hawk Down. Our vibe is still action, but it's very much like, um, for the most part, you always feel like you are outmanned, and so it's up
Mhm.
to you to rise to the occasion to not be outgunned, right?
Mhm.
Um, and part of that was um, there's an entire system for bullets, um, because it's funner to be shot at than to be shot, and so um, there's an entire system where there are bullets that will kind of paint across the screen and things, and there's a lot more squibs and things that are going on than actually hitting you. It's not that the enemies are just inherently bad shots, so that we set their accuracy to 0.5 instead of 1 or something like that. It's not just that. There's literally a system in there where an enemy will go to shoot, and then it tells the bullet system, okay, make these bullets go dot 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 towards me, and so you'll see squibs dot 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 dot, or you'll see something come across the screen dot 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 dot. So you're seeing more bullets than are actually hitting you. That said, the ones that hit you hard, because also while working on it, Modern Warfare. So Modern Warfare 1 was already out. Modern Warfare 2 came out while we were working on Mo 2010, and I was just like, what the fuck? This like this thing just like gag every single thing that you would think of, like surface level. Okay, we're going to make a modern military shooter. It's going to be action, blah blah blah. Like that's your surface level thought, right? And you come up with a list of these surface level things you're going to do. Between the two games, they just were a nuclear bomb. They came in and they did all of them, right? And they did them really well. And it was just like, okay, our vibe is different. Can't do that because they already did it. But okay, so all this, and then there was like, while playing it, like, all of this like strawberry jam on my screen is killing me. With Modern Warfare 2 especially, like they up the you've been hit, indicator, right? And so all of a sudden your screen was covered in strawberry goo all the time. Now, but I really don't like that. I don't like the aesthetic of that. And I don't like that it happens and then I just kind of like hide and I come back out over and over and over again. I don't like that cadence at all. What I want is I want someone pinned down. I want them to take, precise shots. I want them to be Rambo. If they do go Rambo, they get wet and they either die or they really rethink their drink and they start going, okay, I need to be a little more strategic about this. I need to like sit. I need to sit where my other guys are so they can give me cover fire, and I need to really like hunker down, or I need to be smart and utilize the environment and flank, right? Not just charge up the center, get covered in strawberry jam. So make you respect bullets. Yeah, and so when you get hit, there are a myriad of systems that kick in. That like if you're sprinting, as a matter of fact, it doesn't matter whether you're sprinting or not. But whatever, if you're sprinting, we take you out of sprint. We slow you down. Thump the controller quite nicely. The sound is meaty, and the screen response. There's so many layers of like flash and red that happen on the screen that it's just like getting punched in the face. Just boom, boom, whoa, and I would see people who hadn't played, and they try and Rambo it up and just run up the center and then just get punched in the face. And then they go, oh no, and then they'd run back and they'd run back to the AI NPCs that we had, and I'm like, good, because that's the game. The game is that I want you to respect bullets, and I want you to feel really good when you overcome, being pinned down, and I want you to be near your NPCs because they are a tool. Where I would have the level designer place the NPCs essentially, with denote their character. There was always one that was the forward. There was always the gung ho one. There was always the one that was like right near you, and there was always the one that was like a little bit further back, and that gave you an idea of where you should be, right? Again, this is like giving boundaries without putting up giant invisible walls or markers. It was simply the environment and the actual performance, and consistent performance of the AI, and then coupled with, the other side being how the enemies maneuver and just how deadly, their firepower was. So it really forced a certain type of play, which was very different than Call of Duty. So that, coupled with the vibe of the cinematics and the aesthetics and all that stuff, could help pull us away from. I mean, you're always going to get uh, direct comparisons. Uh, there was no way to avoid that. But I want it for people who actually picked up the game and wasn't just looking for an axe to grind, to actually find something there that made it like, oh yeah, this is different. This is cool. I like playing this, as well as Call of Duty, and then there's some people that are like, I like it playing it more. That's cool for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to your point about like trying to get the player to like respect the bullets or kind of have to understand what the gameplay wants out of them. That is often, I think, something I see a lot of trouble, especially in like today's market with like the rise of YouTubers and streamers. There are an infinite number of clips of streamers and YouTubers like playing a game and just either purposely or just completely ignoring what the game wants them to do. And then they'll come back and say, "Oh,
Mhm.
this game is stupid. Why can't I just run out and shoot all these guys? Or why does it knock me out my run when I get shot at?" And as we were saying earlier, with like trying to like get the player into the gameplay loop, especially for action games, I think that's oftentimes one of the hardest things to kind of convey. As you were saying earlier, like the rise of Souls likes, like Elden Ring itself, I still remember the discourse around that game, like week one of its release, with so many people, like game dev side, were just like completely like flabbergasted at this idea of why are people fine with not having quest markers? Why are people, enjoying this game where it doesn't tell you where to go? And it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to understand, both from the consumer and from the developer side, like trying to get them to figure out what is this game asking you to do. The game is asking you to do, tricky platforming, and let's say the jumps and the movement are just like very horrible, then that's obviously a conflict. But if the game is like a horror game, or like let's say like a hardcore action like a Sifu, a God Hand, stuff like that, and the game says, we want you to pay attention to like parrying, and you're not supposed to just be able to mash X and kill everything, and the player just says, well, I'm not going to do that, I don't care about that. It's like, well, you're not going to be able to play this game then. Like, what do you want to do?
Right. And that's the other thing. Like, a lot of um, a lot of AAA development. And this is even before the budgets ballooned to astronomical levels. But there was always this like, make sure you hit the middle kind of like mantra. Um, and I mean, if you look at strike games are not trying to hit the middle. The strike games were not going, yeah, I need to make sure the same person that likes Thunder Force 4 and the same person that likes, Yoshi's Island is gonna play Jungle Strike. Like it was just like I'm like, what? No. It's just not. And and I play lots of different genres and all that stuff. And so um if someone is kind of laser focused on a specific genre that I like, I I respect that and I kind of lean in on that also. So, you know, I don't want I didn't want Treasure to water down their game to for the masses to make it appeal to everyone. I don't want their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, or I guess that's Platinum. I always think of Treasure and Platinum, and it's the same kind of entity. Uh, but it's like don't water it down. Try and hit the masses. Like just pick you know pick your audience, pick your customer, and talk to that customer. Uh, if if the masses don't like your thing, then they're not your customer. You know, you, I would say to execs, you know, I need to pick which side of the road because if I'm
Hmm.
sitting in the middle of it, I'm just going to get hit and run over. Um, and so I can't like make these games that appeal to everyone. What I can do is I can make a game that appeals uh, wholeheartedly to the person that wants it. They're like, yeah, I'm totally bought in on that. I want that thing. And then they get it and they're like, this is exactly what I wanted. And then they will tell their friends, that thing is exactly what I wanted. And their friends who like weren't, maybe not have been 100% on, that's the exact thing that I want. They're like, well, but my friend said, so then they'll try it and, they'll tell two friends and so on and so forth. Um, and that's how I get, how I get more mass appeal. But like I found every single time I tried to do something or any game I worked on that was just trying to hit this wide swath of people, you got nothing, you know. What you ended up with was a game, and it may have sold its units, it may have done all right, but it's rare that people were like, "Oh, that thing changed my life. That thing's great. I want whatever it is that you come up with next."
Yeah.
All of the things that help build a brand. Um, you just get that sale because the person's like, "Yeah, it was all right." And it's just like, "Oh man, life's too short to make just things that are all right."
Yeah. And like it's something I see with a lot of the indie games that like I've been saying this for a lot of people now. I've been checking a lot more of the churn rates when it comes to achievements on Steam. And I've seen so many games that people will say, "Oh, it's the best game ever," or "This game did nothing wrong, it's perfect." And then I look at the store page, or I look at the achievement rate, it goes like 99, 60, 30, 10, and that's
Hmm.
within maybe 90 minutes of playing that game. And yeah, there are going to be people, I think, who take like the wrong lessons from this. They'll think, well, my game sold 500,000 copies. Who cares if only 20% of the players play for more than an hour? But then, like, to your point, the question then turns into, are they going to come and play my next game? Or are they going to be
Right,
interested in what I have next? And most of the time, the answer is no. And it's one
right.
of those things that we see from a lot of, like, kind of like, when Indie Suit gets, like, that first, like, super big success, that, critical and commercial fame, and then 3 to 5 years later, they go out of business because they never put out either anything that was similar or they just kept trying to chase what didn't work in that first game, and
Hmm.
the consumer base just keeps going down and down and down because more people are just going to be like, well, if I didn't like your second game, you're doing the exact same thing in your third. Why
Hmm.
would I buy that?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, I'm real big on, like I said, brand building,
Yeah.
building an army, and all that fun stuff. Because I, I'm also not really tied to a specific genre.
Hmm.
Um, so I want people to understand, um, they're going to get a certain something out of my game. They're going to get a certain level of quality. They're going to get a certain type of vibe, certain way that mechanics work, blah blah blah. Right? It's kind of like what I think everyone strives to do. But I'm really focused on making sure that whoever wanted, game X in genre Y, that they're happy that they got that, and then they go, okay, what do you have next, right? And then it's fine. They can go, oh, you got a platformer before, now you've got a shooter. I'm not really in a shooter, like, but they're not going. I'm not really into shooters, but I'm never going to come back to you. They're going, I'm not really into shooters. I might try it, or I'm not really into shooters. I'll sit this one out, but you're definitely one of my favorite developers, or something, along those lines. I want to make sure that I build a loyal following, um, because there's an enormous amount of work to make a game to begin with, and there's an equally enormous amount of work to sell the game. In the sense of getting awareness, getting people bought in, getting people to play it, and depending upon the game, getting people to play it long enough to see all your yummy goodness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I want to over and over again reset that entire morass of work, by, you know, making the next game, not up to expectations, or not being the thing that I said I was selling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so that's why, like, also, like I said, with me, I have a lot of genres that I want to do before I kick. So it's important that people understand what it is they're getting into. I mean, like, I think I haven't seen the trailer for BPM in a while, but I'm pretty sure it starts off literally by saying it's a physics-based platformer. Um, and Polygunner, like, without a doubt, like, within the first, ignoring my logo, within the first 3 seconds, it says, physics-based isometric runner gun shooter. Like, it just has it. Want anybody going, oh, what is this? Oh, is this like Strike? Is it like Diablo with spaceships? I don't want it ambiguous at all. I want it
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, this is exactly what I'm presenting to you. You like my stuff, come on for the ride, right? If it's not your thing, it's okay. No biggie. I'd rather have I crazy, and my wife, who does all the books, would kill me, but I'd rather not get the sale than to sell to someone and them go, I hate this thing because it's not what I told them it was going to be, or they had some sort of misconception. I really would rather them just know exactly what they're getting into, and then being excited about it. I don't want to see 1-star reviews after someone played 200 hours of my game, because they thought it was an open world survival game and it really was a you know semi-open platformer. Like, no, here's what you're getting. It's gonna be badass because that's what I'm gonna do. That's it.
Yep.
Um,
All right, everyone. I'm going to end the cast here because we spoke for another hour and 20 minutes. This was another very long one with Tony. So tune in next week for part 2 as we continue our discussion about game dev and action design. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments down below, and see everyone in the next part.